Hello and welcome again to this painting I'm working on. And I wasn't happy, or I'm not happy with this painting. And I'm not sure where it needs to go, or at least I wasn't earlier today. And so I looked at the painting. Specifically, I looked at a photo of the painting incidentally, if to get a better understanding of where your artwork is. I find that looking at photos of it will help you kind of remove yourself from the artwork to understand, it gives you like an objective perspective, especially because it's small, on your phone or whatever. And it's helpful for me to get a different perspective, at least on the painting, and give you an understanding of where you need to go. And it's probably one of the best ways to understand like fundamentals, like if your drawing is on, or your value, or your shapes, or your color, or your everything, right? So I was looking at this painting on my phone, and I was like, man, something's bothering me about it. I don't know where to go on it. And I was looking for direction. And I just got really down to earth with it. And I said, you know what? The drawing is bothering me. The drawing is off, okay? And if I can get that back on, that would be great. So the first thing I'm gonna do is scrape off as much of this paint as I can. And I know, a lot of times I'm afraid to do this. But if you look, I'm really pressing down hard with my palette knife here to scrape a lot of this away. You don't really see a lot coming off, do you? I mean, probably these white areas will come off a lot because it's been 12 hours or so, a little bit less than 12 hours since I worked on this. But it's interesting how you could scrape a painting down and pull a tremendous amount of the paint off that you've already put on the day before, and how much actually stays. And of course, this totally depends on how long it's been since you put the paint down, what kind of surface you're using, what kind of paint you're using, medium, and all kinds of other stuff. So your results may vary depending on your setup. Okay, but if you paint similar to I do, which a lot of people don't, on paper, which is a gessoed paper, which is a very absorbent surface, you will see that it stays really well. Yeah, there you go. So most of the paint is actually off of the canvas. This is just the paint that was already soaked in to the gesso that's staying there. So that's the first thing that I want to do. And the next thing I'm going to talk to you about is cheating. How I'm cheating, and how cheating is a wonderful thing. It's this, I don't know where it came from. Probably, when art first started, right? And by the way, I'm putting down Gamblin solvent-free gel. It's the only medium that I go to when I want to thin out something, for two reasons. It has no solvent in it, and it's a gel, so I can put it on a vertical palette and it doesn't slide off, right? And I like it. I've used it before, so it works well. Now, cheating. Years and years ago, actually not too long ago, I think, for a few months ago, and one of the videos I'm going to be putting up shortly, I've gridded out the image that I was working on and the drawing, or my canvas, so I could get the drawing really close. And I'm totally fine with that. Whatever. I don't care. It's not a big deal for me. I'd rather not do that all the time. I want to move away from it. But there's this tendency for many of us, and I've done it for years, to think that getting to a result, however you get there, if you use too many tools, such as tracing or gridding or digital whatever that I'm going to show you, it becomes cheating because you're not working your butt off, right? You're not a real artist because it's not, X, Y, and Z. It has to be this in order for you to be a real artist. I've had people tell me that if you paint even from photos, that you're not a real artist, that you can only paint for life. And come on. I mean, that is just not possible all the time. I mean, are we going to, I have to hire a model to do every single painting? Yeah, I don't have that kind of money. And I'm a daily artist. I paint every single day. So that's not going to happen. Sorry. Not sorry. So I don't consider it cheating painting from photos, and I don't consider it cheating when I trace or grid. Now, I don't like tracing. I haven't traced. The one thing I have done is grid out a lot of photos to get the drawing close quickly. And that's the thing to remember. This is how I feel. The difference between a good drawing and a bad drawing for almost any skilled artist, whatever skill that you have, the difference between the two, in my opinion, is time. Even an artist that is unskilled, I feel that if they spend enough time working on their painting or their drawing, they could get it to look exactly like the photo. And today, I want to fix this drawing, but I don't have a lot of time. So here's what I did. I have Photoshop, and I imposed the photo of this painting over the actual image that I'm painting from. And then within Photoshop, I traced, on a separate layer, I traced over the image in very general terms where things lie. And I did it in red. And what I'm doing right now is looking at where those lines end up. Hopefully you can see this. I'll zoom in. So that's what it looks like. It's all these red lines over the head and other places, right? Just kind of outlining specifics. And it's definitely something that you could do to make things easier. You could totally do this. But the problem with it is, and I don't call it cheating because whatever, I don't care. If I made a tremendous painting and someone, it goes into a gallery even next week and someone buys it because it moves them in some way, they don't care. They really don't care if it looks like the person. They don't even care what means I use to get to that painting. They just care that it moved them in some way and they were interested in it and they bought it, right? I'm teaching a class right now, and probably the biggest issue that many of the people have in the class is drawing ability. And it's really, really frustrating for them to not be able to complete a painting within, a very, I wouldn't even say a short period of time, but within a few weeks, because their drawing skills are so underdeveloped, right? I wouldn't say bad. We're all at different levels. And so I was showing them different techniques of gridding. And what you can do is understand where you're at as far as your drawing skill is, and then set up a method where you can use the tools and you can work to move away from the tools as well. And it's a very practical way of doing things. So let's say that you do a grid on your image that is 1/4 inch squares, and a grid on your canvas that is like 1/4 inch squares, or 1/2 inch. That looks like a 1/2 inch, right? And so you got squares all over it, right? It's a nice grid. 1/2 inch here, and it's pretty easy to translate that. It's, you know, it's a lot easier than drawing from, a lot easier just from drawing from the thing. I mean, you still have to see like what intersects the lines and the corners on that grid, and you start drawing from that, and you do have some transferring from that. With a 1/2 inch grid, you're probably using like if you had to put a percentage to it, it's probably 80% the tools and 20% your influence, which means that you don't have a lot of say in what's happening there. Like, you've pulled a lot of your ingenuity, yourself, away from it, and you're leaning on the tools so much to get you there that you won't reach something where, oh, this is my tendencies to draw this way, right? And you won't find yourself. You won't get a better understanding of yourself in that way. But it's fine, because you're just worried about, hey, how can I transfer? How can I get this image to look like that on my canvas? And that's great. Whatever, that's fine. But don't do that forever. Eventually, instead of a 1/2 inch grid, grow it to an inch grid. So you do a few paintings, maybe 5, 10, 15, with gridding, and you're like, oh, okay, this is pretty easy. And you know, by the 10th painting, you say, okay, this is getting way too easy. I'm making some good paintings. I'm getting a better understanding of, you know, drawing and figures, right? And I'm focusing on what I'm doing, even when I'm gridding here. Like, I'm just not turning my brain off, but I'm trying to understand the figure as I'm doing that. So let's go to a 1 inch grid. Now, once we go to 1 inch grid, it makes it a little bit harder, just a little bit harder, not much harder. It's like a progression. And all of a sudden, now, instead of it being 80% the tools, now it's only like 50% the tools. And I'm just making up these percentages, right? But it's more you and less tool, okay? Like, you have to think a little bit more. You have to come up with things a little bit more. You have to adjust the lines to meet you a little bit more, right? I mean, this is still a far cry away from tracing, like tracing from the photo exactly. That's 99% the tool, you know, and drawing, and 5% you. I mean, it's like the argument with AI. If you're generating art by putting in prompts, it's 100% AI. I mean, I'm sorry, but moving text into images, you're not learning how to draw or how to paint, or you're not learning how to mix colors or color theory. I'm sorry, but you're generating images through text. You're learning how to make the AI do something. But that's a whole other discussion. So you do a bunch of paintings at 1 inch grid, okay? Maybe 15, maybe 20, and you're like, this is harder. Because sometimes a whole eyeball will be inside of that 1 inch grid, and you have to figure it out yourself. At least you got the placement on the page right? At least you got maybe the entirety of the head correct, or close to it. But you have to think a bit more. You have to work a bit harder. You have to put more of you into the artwork, okay? And I was way off on this head. I was so far off on this head. Now, what I'm doing here is basically tracing. I mean, it's not even a grid. At this point, I mean, I couldn't grid out the whole thing. That's my excuse. But I'm not doing it so detailed that it's all the tools and nothing me, right? And this, you know, what I'm talking about here doesn't even account for the fact that you will eventually paint over all the lines that you draw in. Whether you're drawing with a brush or drawing with graphite or a pencil or something like that, you will paint over that, and you'll have to draw with your brush. In the end, it's all drawing, and you'll obliterate most of those lines. So, back to what I was talking about, back to the progression of getting better at drawing slowly by utilizing these tools. So let's say you've done a whole bunch of paintings, and now you're ready to move to like a 2-inch grid. So now all of your squares are this big. Well, that gets getting really hard. Like if I did a 2-inch grid on this thing, you know, half this head would be inside of that, but at least I got, you know, the idea of the size of the head and better placement. If I did that, this drawing I wouldn't have to have fixed, right? It would have been a lot easier. And I don't think I have to go any further on this. You kind of get the idea. You're utilizing these tools, but you're moving it further and further away from this necessity to use them. You have this this consistent idea that I don't want to be dependent on the tools all the time. Eventually, I want to do my own thing. I want to get better at drawing, and you can move away from it this way. I think that's a wonderful progression, like to use the tools but not abuse them. Be interesting to hear what people think about that, like if you still think that's cheating, and if, you know, because I've heard people say you're not a real artist if X, Y, and Z, whatever that is. And I disagree with that. The only time that you know, if you paint, you're an artist. If you sculpt, you're an artist. If you draw, you're an artist. It doesn't matter all the other intricacies with it. Doesn't matter the materials or tools or whatever you use. Wow, that's really far down there. So I'm really far off on this head. But I think the first thing that we have to get used to is to be understanding of ourselves and where we are within our progression. And to kind of revel in that fact, like, okay, yeah, I'm not this amazing draftsman, and then add yet at the end of it. You know, I would love to draw as well as, you know, Ilya Repin and many, you know, Russian artists that come out of the Repin's Academy, like if that's what you want to do. Or you could say, you know, I want to draw like Egon Schiele with, you know, the way that he can express form in this abstract way that's just so gorgeous, right? Which is very different than academic training. Okay. So you can have that understanding of yourself, and then to figure out, okay, what are some methods that I can utilize to get there, and to do it in a way that I progress easily and continuously, but I'm not so far out of my comfort zone all the time that I just hate life. There was one artist I was teaching, and they were really, really upset. They just could not get the drawing right, you know? And I'm like, well, if it was so not fun to them, like they weren't having a good time, then I was like, well, you know, let's go into the gridding thing. Because we want to have fun with this, right? But we also want to eventually challenge ourselves. I've talked about before this idea of comfort zone. Like we have this circle of comfort zone that we're in, okay? And we want to be outside of that comfort zone into the uncomfortable zone, because that's where growth is, right there. But we don't want to go so far out of it that we're just so uncomfortable that we just hate life and we hate this art thing. We don't want to do it anymore. You know, if you set these tremendous amount of rules upon yourself based on what everyone else tells you that they think, oh, you're not a real artist if you draw from photos. You're not a real artist if you trace. You're not a real artist if you use a grid. You're not a real artist unless you're using oil paint. You're not a real artist unless you buy these really expensive materials, right? You know, all that crap. The last time I looked, Vermeer's paintings were just about priceless. And many people don't sell them. They keep them forever. And we know for a fact that Vermeer used the camera obscura with his paintings, which was a tool that basically was like tracing. I don't care. Those paintings are absolutely gorgeous. They're beautiful. They are amazing. And he found a tool at the time that allowed him to create those works. And they're still in the, you know, you go to the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam, Netherlands, and you see people crowded around Vermeer's more than they are the Rembrandts. I find that really interesting, right? We don't care. Like, no one there cares that he used a camera obscura. I'm sure there's some artist with their nose in the air that says, oh, he wasn't a real artist. He wasn't that whatever, right? Well, guess what? that really doesn't matter, okay? It doesn't really matter. So figure out what works for you on this. And if you want to use the grid system, I would suggest that you try and move away from it. But if you're like, you know what? I'm not even going to do that. I'm going to use the grid system that Chris pointed out, but I'm going to keep it as a 1/4 inch or a 1/2 inch for the rest of my life. Because you know what? The one thing that I hated about this whole painting thing was the drawing stage of it. And if I could get away from that and just paint and make the art that I want to make, then good, do that. That's fantastic. You know who you are. You can do that, okay? And if any other artist comes around and they say, oh, you're not a real artist, you don't have any real skill because you're doing nothing but gridding stuff, you can say, you know what? Yeah, and I'm not going to repeat what you can say after that. You can tell them, this is me, you do you, I do me. Well, go away. I mean, there's so many beautiful paintings out there. Like Kehinde Wiley, W-H-I-L-E-Y. I love Kehinde Wiley. His paintings are amazing. Not only in skill, but also in the message that they have. But they're more about the message than they are about the process. Like, I could care less. Like, I'm not looking at Kehinde Wiley's work and asking, how did he paint like that? I want to learn how he painted in oil that way. I don't care. I care about his message. And if I found out like that he traced all of his paintings, I would be like, awesome, that's cool. I would still, you know, if I could own one of his paintings, I mean, millions and millions of dollars, right? It would be fantastic. And you may find as well that, you know what, I don't care that I'm tracing this landscape, because it's not about the process of making this landscape. It's more about what I'm trying to say with the landscape. That's the most important thing for me, is what I'm saying not how I'm putting the paint down or my skill in drawing, right? And then, there's the other side of that coin. You could be in an atelier like the Angel Academy in Florence, Italy, or the Studio Incaminati, I think, in Philadelphia, which is fantastic. I always like looking at the artists that come out of there. That was started by Nelson Shanks. These ateliers where they send you through this corridor. And yeah, drawing is huge. Drawings, you can't touch oil paint until you are done with this stage. And it's very limiting. If that's what you want, if you want that tremendous amount of skill and that's the most important thing for you, then that's good too. But understand yourself, understand where you want to be, and then utilize the wide world of things out there to express yourself. And when I was knocking AI before, I'll even say this. Maybe you just have fun generating artificial images by AI. Putting in prompts, figuring out prompts, and making images that way. That's fine. Whatever. I don't particularly like AI, but I'm not going to get in the way of individuals and their creativity, because that kind of limitation can stifle new and different possibilities that I have no idea about. If every previous generation said, you have to do it my way or no way at all, we would all still be painting like it was, or we probably wouldn't be painting because we wouldn't have gotten out of the Dark Ages, right? It just wouldn't have happened. So, who am I to judge? I really love, there's a passage in The Art Spirit by Robert Henri, which is one of my most favorite books. And this is written in early 1900s. So Art Spirit, Robert Henri, Henri. There's a wonderful audiobook out of it you can get on Audible, which I really enjoyed. I bought that a while ago. Actually, I might want to listen to that again soon. But he was talking about, and you'll have to get through the language, because yeah, it's 1900s. Not very progressive back then. Sorry. I mean, you have to kind of pull out a lot of the sexism and racism that's there and go, okay, yeah, don't really like that. But at the same time, he's talking about art stuff, and I can take that knowledge as a good thing. But a lot of the other undertones, not so good. Okay, so just a caveat to that book. Okay. But one of the things that he was talking about is, where they would have competitions, right? So you put up a bunch of your work, you're a student, and we have nothing but the older generation to judge our work. And he really kind of railed against that. He was like, why is it like this? Right? We have a bunch of these old people, men and women, that are looking at our work and judging our work for its viability, when honestly, they don't even know. They're far removed from the current culture. I would say the majority of people over 60 right now are annoyed at technology and any kind of technology. And you would probably be hard to find, it would probably be very difficult to find any person over 60 taking courses for, drawing in Procreate, or in Photoshop, because they're like just not into it. It's just not their generation. It's not part of what they're interested in a lot of ways. And I'm not saying everybody. I'm pretty sure I hope there's a person that's 60 years old or 70 years old just killing it on Procreate. That would be fantastic to see, you know, like knows all the technology and everything. You know, that would be, what's his name? Craig Mullins. Oh, wow. Yeah, he's getting up there. He'll be killing it within all that technology, right? But, you know, having this older generation always judge us for what we should and shouldn't be doing, I think can be really detrimental. And it goes back to this idea of like kind of like I was saying before, knowing what you want to do, knowing what you want to, how you want to express yourself, okay? And then moving through that. And if that ends up being tracing or gridding or projecting and tracing or whatever it is, Procreate, oil paint, whatever, just know that this is where you are, this is where you want to be, and no one can tell you that you're doing it wrong. Because I'm sorry, but no, I'm not sorry. There's no wrong and right anymore when we're talking about art, okay? That went out the window decades and decades ago. There is no more right and wrong. You can do whatever you want now. You can create however you like. It doesn't have to even be physical, right? It can be anything. Okay. So that's what I have to say about that. And I got the drawing a bit closer, although it's still going to be a lot of hard work moving it from here and correcting things. And that's going to be tomorrow, because that's all the time I have today to work on this painting. Tomorrow I'll work on it a bit more and then just begin moving through it and just having fun with it. Thank you so much for watching my videos. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you on the next one. Bye-bye.